Hello, hello. We are live. Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. Once again, I have with me, as every week, I have with me Mr. Nate the lawyer, the wonderful, the intelligent, the friendly, the affable.
You must be talking about somebody else. It can't be me.
Of course it's you. Of course it's you. So we're not sure if Kurt's going to join us. If he wants to, he's more than welcome to. But we haven't heard from him. So yeah, we may be joined by him later. We'll see. But otherwise, you've got us.
Yes.
So yeah. So let's jump into. Well, first off, how's your week been, Nate?
It's been pretty much okay. I'm just I'm obviously things are the channel's really growing. Just trying to it's every day just trying to see if I can be better, put out some better content. But it becomes a lot. So hopefully YouTube hasn't figured out if I got 100,000 subs yet. I think they're still trying to figure out if I bought subs or what. I don't know. So, but they do it for everybody. So
yeah. Okay. Yeah. I wonder how long that process takes after someone reaches 100,000, which I mean, this is our first like lawyer spot live stream since your 100,000. Last week you were like almost there, and I was like, get him there. So now we can. Well, I want to say officially congratulate you, but as you say that YouTube is still verifying that all of those subs are real.
No, I mean, to be honest with you, I've been fortunate that because when I started this, it was kind of just about the facts, right? It was just kind of like, but when I started to do this trend, because I had my channel for a while, but then when I said, I'll start making content, I was just kind of saying, well, what do people ask for? And it was just kind of like, they want facts. So I was like, well, you know what? Let me see if I can just give you unadulterated facts and see what happens. And it's been like a storm. It's like people are just gravitating toward it. And that's what it's for. And I think that's what most of our legal content misses here online. Sometimes just the objective, like, hey, listen, no matter what the outcome is, here's the law, here are the facts, and then you decide what the outcome should be. But now the law and the facts. So, and I think that's what all of us, because that's what we are. We are legal communicators, right? We try to communicate it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. So no, I definitely agree. And I found that those are the videos that I prefer to make too. And I found that those have been pretty successful also on my channel. And I think that part of it is because there's just sort of this, like, it's almost like there's a gap in general, like on any platform, any, form of media, for any kind of this content, and especially when it's even remotely political in nature, because, it's just like you turn on the news to try to just, understand what's going on, and you're bombarded with opinion and more opinion. So it's nice. Oh, super chat. This is my brother, Andy. Nate is so much cooler than Alita. Alita's words, not mine. Lucille Bluth. I mean, this is actually very true. This is very true. These are my words. Nate is way cooler than me.
Brotherly love. No, that is not true. Alita is awesome. Trust me. It's you guys you're talking me up now. But no, it's funny. This YouTube journey, we meet people all the time. Like we've met people in the chat and just other creators, and it's an amazing journey. It's an amazing process. And sometimes you meet bad people, sometimes you meet good people. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't change it for the world. This is a very freeing. It's freeing to be able to do YouTube in this way. It is, and it's also freeing to know that when you put some time and effort into something and people appreciate what you do, it makes it feel a lot better. It's funny because I used to say I do YouTube for free all these years. I didn't even realize you can get paid for it. Now I realize I can get paid for it. So
yeah. No, it's awesome. It's awesome if you can tap into the right thing that people are interested in, and and foster a community. It's awesome. So so yes, I mean, congrats on that, and I'm super stoked for continuing creating the content, and and seeing your content on your channel. I mean, it's great. Super excited.
Hey, listen, you're going to be there too eventually. It's just the only thing it just takes is just time, and the time that we do have, and for all those people out there who want to be creators, only thing you have to do, it's about organization, putting out product and understanding that, you know, YouTube is about, our channels are not about the topics, but more about people and how people, what people want to watch. And that's what it really is about.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I would agree. So Eldon Bailing says, Nate, you must out-grift Nick. Nick has been grift king for far too long. I'm sure he's referring to Nick Rekieta.
Yeah.
Which I actually haven't worked with him yet. I should try to reach out to him and see if he would have me on his show or collab or something like that.
He would definitely. Yeah. Nick loves to have attorneys. I call it the testing ground, because Nick does his 11 o'clock streams.
Yeah.
So you go on 11 o'clock and you go on to like 4 o'clock. But he's one thing though with Nick, he is probably let me see. I'm trying to think who the best interviewers on YouTube. I think Nick is either number 1 or number 2, because I think Viva does a really great job interviewing people.
Nice.
And Nick, I think, is like number 2, because Nick can keep you there for 2-3 hours, and you're like, my God, I didn't even know we were here for 2 or 3 hours, because he keeps the conversation going. But Viva has a more, like, his conversations are shorter, his interviews are shorter, but he does a very good job of making you feel comfortable in your interview.
Nice.
And also Eric Hunley. Eric Hunley's
Yes.
I would say he's up in that top echelons too, where when he does the Tiger. What's it? The Tiger Queen? What's her name? Carol Baskin.
Yes, Carol Baskin.
Yeah. So he's one of those people too. And that's the most important thing about interviewing, right? Getting another person to talk, and they know how to make people talk. So
yeah. No, I have experienced that with Eric Hunley on his channel, as you know. But yeah, so that's cool. So yeah, and Nick seems like a really nice guy too. So so that would be cool. So yeah. Nick, if you happen to be watching this,
don't worry, I'll send him a message right after this. Hey, listen, I'll make the intro. But I thought you guys met. No, you guys probably haven't met on Eric's channel, because he's on Eric's channel on Fridays too. So yeah,
I met Viva once or twice on there, but not Nick. He wasn't on there.
All right. Yeah, so, you'll see Viva, Emily, we all go on there. So
yeah. So fun stuff. So turning to this week, it's been a little bit of a slow legal news week. I mean, ever since Governor Cuomo kind of deflated the impeachment balloon.
Yes.
It seemed like there was just this like slow ramping up of impeachment talk in the state of New York, and then he was saying for weeks and months actually that he was never going to resign.
No, it wasn't happening.
And it was interesting, because I remembered seeing on YouTube that there was a press conference with his attorney that, she was up there and she was defending him and, and talking about the state attorney general's report on the sexual harassment claims. And she was like, well, here's a weak point, and here's a weak point, and here's a weak point. And so I remember I kind of popped into that for a few minutes, and then I was like, okay, I mean, this is kind of what anyone has expected to see, I guess. It's the continuation of this line of Cuomo basically denying everything and saying he's going to stick around, and then next thing I know, Cuomo himself is on and he's resigning.
Yeah,
so that was really surprising.
Well, I think there's 2 tracks here. I think there's a criminal probe, right? They have the criminal probe piece going to it. They have the civil piece to it. He's probably going to be sued. And then you have the political piece. And I think that's the problem. And the one thing, I always say is that Cuomo was trying to be Trump, but he wasn't as good as being Trump, as Trump is at being Trump. And what I mean by that, Trump was able to get everyone in line to say, okay, this is where I'm going to go. I'm going to do this. And he has like 26 allegations, but nobody even cares about that. Nobody talks about that. People are still voting for him no matter what, right? Nobody's telling him when he became president, nobody said that he should resign. Joe Biden is someone else who does this very well. Joe Biden had all those accusations. You see all the pictures of him grabbing people, kissing people, the whole nine.
Sniffing people.
and then you had all these wonderful Me Too people saying, well, he's better than Trump, right? So both sides do it, but it's all depends if you're able to get that, to put yourself in a position where it's me or the other harasser, right? And nobody wants to vote for the other harasser, so they're voting for me. Right. So Joe Biden played off that very well. So the Democrats, they'll say Trump, the Republicans will say Biden, but they both have the same issue. With Cuomo doesn't have that safety net, right? And I think the political side of it, he did for a while. And he did because I did a video on the polls here in New York, and he did have that support for a while, where so like 80% of minorities said he shouldn't resign. But now you have a minority AG. She puts up the report. You have the Me Too. You got all this stuff. And at a point when he loses that support at the ground level, he didn't have his Trump supporters. His Trump supporters gone. They left and said, well, now it's time for him to go. And when that happened, then you've lost the political support, and it's time for him to go. So that's why I think he resigned, because he saw the writing on the wall. I assume for Congress, they ask people, like, how you're going to vote. And they probably did their little straw poll and found out that there were the votes there for impeachment, and said, hey, you're going. Either you're going to go on your own or you're going to be impeached, but you are going. So he chose the lesser of two evils.
Yeah. It's interesting to me because, I mean, I was looking at the impeachment laws in New York, and there's actually, in the New York State Constitution, there's no definition of impeachable acts. Like it doesn't say, high crimes and misdemeanors, for example, like it does in the US Constitution. I thought that was really interesting. And it's even more interesting that there's only been one governor that's ever been impeached in the state of New York. And looking at the history of that was back in 1913. That was maybe a political, I don't want to say the word, it's a little too violent, but basically a political taking out, let's say, because that was, what was it? Governor Sullivan, I think was his name. Sure. But he basically was he was in line with like the Tammany Hall Democratic group, and that basically like they pretty much made his career, but he was a little bit too independent for their taste and a little bit too progressive for their taste. And so it was interesting because he ended up making his way into the governorship after a very long history of working, I think, also in the U.S. Congress and in the state legislature, I think. And it was really interesting to see because it was I was looking at an analysis basically of the fact that that was a possible due process and substantive due process issue, that he did not have any sort of protections on that. So it was interesting to me that hasn't been changed over time, and that hasn't had any more examples of that in the state of New York. So the fact that there haven't been more governors that have been kind of taken out like that, but I don't know, maybe.
Just because I think, to backtrack, a lot of people, especially a lot of the fans, sometimes confuse impeachment, the impeachment process, with a traditional legal process, like a court process, which but it's a political process. So even for instance, with the U.S. Constitution, it defines it as high crimes and misdemeanors.
Thank you.
but who defines what are high crimes and misdemeanors? And the sole right to define what those words mean are not the courts. It's Congress. So Congress can say, well, the president jaywalked, so that's a high crime and misdemeanor, and we're going to impeach him for that. And the courts can't look at that and say that's not right. There was actually one judge in the U.S. Circuit who was impeached for drunkenness. He was a federal judge impeached for drunkenness. He was too drunk on the bench, so they impeached him. And they didn't even hold a formal vote. Well, they held a formal vote. They didn't have hearings. They held a formal vote, impeached him, and then they impeached him at the Senate, and he was impeached at the federal level. So in the New York State Constitution, they just have to make sure it's just like it's a pure political process, right? If the Senate and the House, you get enough people in those chambers to say we don't want you to be governor anymore, then you're not governor anymore. But the same is true for president, because again, it's really just a political process and not a legal process. So due process rights, for instance, I think Judge Nixon, when he was impeached in the 90s, he made the due process argument, and the courts rejected that argument and saying, well, it's a political process, you don't have due process rights. Only right that you have is the vote. Did enough members of the House vote against you? Did enough members of the Senate vote against you? And if that's true, then you're out.
Yeah. So Lauren Myers was asking if the judge was drunk on the bench, or if this is just general drunkenness.
Well, the full story is that the judge was, they believe, well, today when you read back on the history, they believe that the judge had a mental illness, just with age, just like so the person,
Okay.
it's a lifelong appointment, but the person didn't want to resign. So
Okay.
they were trying to figure out a way to remove him from office. They asked him to
Okay.
resign. He didn't resign, and they were like, "All right, well, he's because he was and the judge was slurring his words and things of that nature. So they put it down as drunkenness, and that was it.
Oh, maybe that was also a little bit of, oddly enough, a way to save face a little bit. If he's, I mean, that sounds like maybe that's like Alzheimer's, dementia, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Maybe, I don't know.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. So, but I mean, anyway, so in this case with Cuomo, I mean, he could still be impeached. I don't know if there's any political will for that now that he's resigned, but I have seen at least one state Congress member put out a statement saying that they should still impeach. And that was a Democrat, by the way. It wasn't a Republican, saying that they should still impeach because that they could still prevent him from ever holding public office again.
yeah.
But, I mean, at the same time, I mean, that would be the result of an election anyway. So if the New York electorate wants to not have him back, I mean, they can always, say, no, we're not going to reelect you. If you want to try to run for governor or for any other office in New York. So I don't know.
Yeah, but the problem is that because the Democrats always also have a political problem, and that is, let's say we do have, why would the Democrats want to haul in a Democratic governor before an election year to air all his dirty laundry and then go and have a Republican say, look at the Democrats, they eat their own, So
yeah, that was the other part that I was thinking about was the timing of it, because we are like really just now going into midterm elections. And that is something, I mean, New York is one of those states that things that happen in New York catch attention nationwide, and especially relating to the pandemic. So the impeachment wasn't just looking at, the investigation wasn't just looking at, the harassment allegations. They were also looking at the nursing home issues. Yes. They were looking at other, like other stuff that he was doing relating to covering up. There was a bridge named after, I guess his father. I was going to say either father or grandfather, that had some structural problems that he apparently, his administration maybe covered up. I don't know, but there's a lot there that would have been drummed up and really extended through this election season, that they have, that would have possibly impacted the midterm elections. So I'm not surprised that they basically decided very swiftly to say, nope, it's time for you to go.
And Democrats, Democrats hold all three chambers. They have total control of government.
Yes.
And again, it just, I think right now they want to recharge the base. Let's get Cuomo out. Now they're going to put a woman there. Now it's, I think you get the best of both worlds, but then dragging Cuomo through a trial, that's political suicide. If any Democrats saying that, then they just don't understand. They want Republicans to get more power.
Yeah. So thanks for the super chat. I think Me Hammered. That's probably how you pronounce it, right? So happy you do all this stuff. I met a few judges and they could not believe this was a hobby of mine. Also, sorry you all have judges watching now. No worries. We appreciate everyone watching.
Yes.
Yeah, and thanks again for the super chat. That was very kind of you. So that is Cuomo. And the fun stuff about his resignation, and I don't know that there's going to be any impeachment. What do you think? Probably not. No political will for that.
If it is, I think they would be. I say this. I think they'd be stupid to do it. But if they do, so be it. Because the only thing you do is alienate the base. Cuomo still has some 30 or 40% support in the electorate, and I wouldn't want to be the Democrat who has to go. Who now has a 30% of their electorate voting for the other guy, right? Because that already puts you down. So it's a tough little pill to swallow. I think the same thing with Biden. I think Biden has the same issue, and Trump has the same issue. But and the best thing to do is just let him go away quietly, and so be it. If it was Republicans, then I think you could scorch him. But right now, it's Democrats. It just doesn't make any political sense.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So, well, so anything else you want to say on that subject before we move on?
I also thought it was interesting to see like how the ultra right wing, like One American News and I forget, yes, I think it's One American News, Greg Kelly, they were defending Cuomo. And it was interesting to see because that's one of my things usually with Republicans is that them not being consistent. I'll say the Republicans aren't consistent. They'll accept this for Trump. But
I think if we want to say that, I mean, I think either side, depending on the topic, depending on the facts, human beings, generally speaking, are inconsistent.
But by me saying Republicans are consistent, is not me saying Democrats are consistent.
Yeah.
Democrats are just as Biden.
I just wanted to highlight that.
Biden, exactly the Me Too movement and Biden. That's the biggest. That's the biggest inconsistency ever. But what I mean is, I generally, my big issue is you guys can't be inconsistent. You guys can't say on one end this is good, but then when it's my guy, it's not good, right? It's got to be consistent all the way. And with this Cuomo thing, they have been extremely consistent. They said the Trump stuff was nothing, was a nothing burger. This. They have also now come out and say the Cuomo stuff was a nothing burger. This wasn't harassment. They looked at the same videos and audios that we saw. They said this is nothing. This is a witch hunt. They wanted them out. AG has political aspirations. So it's refreshing on one end to see that people are evaluating it critically and not based on party lines. But it's just I think you can't dismiss 11 women coming forward and telling their story, right? Maybe one or two stories you can poke holes into, but 11 people coming forward and saying this is happening to me. Obviously, the governor has a problem, but that was the most fascinating part with me because it showed that I was already prejudging those channels and that as being, I was like, oh, whether they're going to jump on this Cuomo thing, and they were like, no, we don't believe this is as what it seems. This is wrong, So I was like, okay, there is some internal consistency there, but we'll see, because again, all this Me Too stuff, it's politically driven, and I think the Democrats, when it happens with a Democrat, they are in one of the toughest spots because they are the true justice, Me Too party, but when it happens to them, it's like, is it how far can we go? And I think Joe Biden's issues, if I'll say this, any Democrat out there saying Cuomo should resign are probably the same ones that voted for Joe Biden. That is hypocrisy.
Right. And there was a response by Tara Reid, right? The woman who accused Joe Biden during the 2020 election of previous misconduct. And so that was, I saw that had kind of floated up on Twitter and elsewhere, that she had kind of responded to be like, well, take a look at Mr. President over here and my accusations against him. So yeah.
It's insane. It's insane. So
yeah.
I'll do a super chat.
Yeah, another super chat.
Oh, that's but for Chris Cologne.
Oh, nice. Thank you for the super chat, Chris. It says, Nate, were you ever able to figure out why the state of Massachusetts is using an inquest instead of a grand jury? Why is a DA relying on a judge to recommend charges?
Yeah, I looked at it and I was thinking, when I looked at it, actually I had to go to a birthday party, so I didn't finish. But it seems like, because here in New York we have something similar, and I actually talked to a friend of mine about it. And here we have something similar where, let's say, if you want to arrest someone, there's a couple of ways you can do it. You could do it based on probable cause, right? Where I have probable cause and go and arrest someone as a cop, so you don't need to go to a court. But sometimes the cops, the DA, they would rather go to a judge and have the judge issue an arrest warrant or issue charges. So they'll say, well, here's the evidence. And they would want the judge to find probable cause. Now it's rare for that to happen. And the reason why is because if a judge issues an arrest warrant and finds probable cause based on the information provided by either the DA or law enforcement, then the person who has the arrest warrant automatically has those Sixth Amendment rights of the counsel and everything, because you started judicial proceedings. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure. I was trying to figure out but that's the process federally and even in New York. But I'm not sure if that's the exact same process in Massachusetts, but it seems like that's one of the processes where you can go to either a grand jury or you can have, like the preliminary hearings. Most states, if you're doing something for felonies, require grand juries to indict for felony charges. But some states do not require that. So some states you can have a judge. So I'm not sure if Massachusetts is one of those states that require grand juries for felonies, but not all states do. Even though it should be, it's one of those. I don't know if you remember in common law when they do talk about incorporation, how they incorporate, let's say, the freedom of speech to the states through the 14th Amendment.
Right.
For those of you who are into constitutional law, look up the law of incorporation. But one of the amendments that weren't incorporated was the grand jury amendment, the one that says you have to have a grand jury to be indicted for indictment. So I'm not sure if Minnesota does that, but that's the reason why it seems like it. Now, is there a political reason why? I don't know the political reason why, but I think the functional reason why is that you can have a judge issue the probable cause through that way, or the DA could do it themselves by going to a grand jury. And it seems like in this issue, the DA doesn't. The DA wants to, and again, it may be a political football to kick, but you'll say, okay, well, let's give it to the judge. If the judge says no, then you can just say, oh, well, it was the judge. Versus the DA says no, then everybody's gonna be like, it's the DA. You know what I mean?
How did the question of this standard in Massachusetts, how did that come up?
Well, there was a issue, but I'm really not at liberty to say, but there's an issue that of a death that happened. I believe it's in custody death that happened, and they were trying to figure out why they were. It seemed like the state was using some interesting procedures that just aren't normal, because if something like that happens, generally there's certain procedures that they use for everybody. But then when they start using these off the cuff procedures, you're like, well, why are you going to a judge to do this? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? That's kind of why all this is coming up, because it seems like now it's becoming a little bit more, let's cover our behinds versus let's seek justice for the family. And I think that's the kind of the issue that's going on.
Interesting. Okay. Well, cool. So
but thanks, Chris.
Yeah. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you for the question. It's interesting. I'm much less familiar with these kinds of issues of criminal procedure, just because I haven't actually practiced criminal law. As interesting as I find it, especially looking at the elements of different crimes, et cetera, et cetera. I love analyzing it, but the actual practice and how it varies from state to state, it's interesting. So I appreciate learning from you, because I know that you have a lot of experience in this area. So
yeah, most of my experience is on the arrest side of it, and really not the prosecution side. Because the prosecutor, I wasn't at the prosecutor's office as long as I was in law enforcement. But the one thing is that sometimes they do that. But it's rare though that they'll say, well, let's just go to a judge instead of going to a grand jury. But but again, it's a quandary. I'm never going to pretend like it's not. It is a quandary on why they would do that.
Yeah,
one versus the other.
Yeah. So yeah, that's interesting. Well, on that note, we can probably. You want to move on to the next subject?
Sure.
So I feel like I something happened with Britney Spears, so I have to talk about it. So this week, recently, Britney Spears' new attorney have filed a petition to move up the hearing that's already set at the end of September. There's a hearing set for September 29th, I think, on whether or not Jamie Spears should still be the conservator or whether he should be removed as conservator. Over Britney Spears. So they had already filed that petition for that hearing, and Britney's attorney filed another petition asking to move that hearing up as early as, I think, late August or early September. In order for a judge to grant that, there usually has to be some reason for shortening that time period, because anytime you have a question that's that serious, you want to give the parties really as much time as possible to argue on the merits. They're going to go back and forth on the petition. One party files a petition, the opposing party files a response, probably against it. And so you want to give them enough time to properly respond, because there's certain timing deadlines that each side has in order to respond and respond again, rebut, all that kind of stuff. So the judge, generally speaking, wants to give all of that time for all of that to happen, so that they can fully kind of flesh out all of the arguments in this whole universe of arguments, basically. And in this case, I think the main argument was that Britney's attorney said that that Britney's dad is spending all of her money, overspending everything on paying himself and for other expenses and all this kind of stuff. And so he's basically dwindling down her estate. And so that was like the main urgency here. And I think probably the emotional aspect as well, that the effect that it has on Britney. The court rejected it this week. And it wasn't really terribly surprising, to be honest, because this is, I mean, in order for a judge to move it up, like I said, they favor keeping that later deadline so that everything can be fleshed out. And evidently, the possibility of him spending all of, Britney's money, or a lot of Britney's money, was not enough. Probably because the court figured that money can be returned in some way at some point. So what do you think, Nate?
Ooh, money can be returned is usually not really good if if somebody's taking all your money, because that's a hope and a dream. But I don't know, because there's so much that, I hate the Britney Spears case, but there's so much we don't know. Like what were the reasons why? Has he been? From all my understanding is that they've looked into the finances. Every time they've looked into the finances, they seem to be okay. They seem to be right. And now, there's allegations that they're not right. I don't know, what's the probable cause for that? Is there paperwork? Is there this? Is there, I just don't know. So, unless, if you want to move something up like that, unless you have some reason or something that's, like you're saying, something that's overwhelming, then maybe, yeah. But I don't think that at this point in time they've shown that. But maybe they will. Maybe I'm just not seeing it. But I don't know. I do think a couple of things. One, Britney should be free, right? If this is about her running her own life and she says she wants to do it, fine. I'm with all that. But I also am not for having someone who is mentally ill being put in a position where they can harm themselves or others in some way.
Or someone else can take advantage of them.
Or someone else can take advantage of them. And I'm not sure if Britney fits that category. But that's what he's saying. That's what she's saying. Hopefully the judge will get, because and people always call me a nutter for this, but I have confidence in our legal system. I have confidence that this judge is not going to let her be taken advantage of. I have confidence, and if it happens, I hope there are consequences for these people. But this is somebody who's very public. He has a lot of support, and I don't think you can just walk. I don't think you can just walk away or believe that this is a nothing burger without saying that the court is somehow culpable or her attorneys are somehow culpable. But we'll see. Because again, it's just so much that I just don't know, that I'm just afraid to say I'm afraid to come to the wrong conclusion based on this limited evidence.
Yeah, no, I'm completely with you on that. I feel like we have like unpopular opinions on this subject because it sounds like everyone else that I've seen talk about it, or either on Twitter or on YouTube or elsewhere, has been like, she needs to be freed yesterday, and I if she is being taken advantage of under this conservatorship, then absolutely. Yeah. If she's capable of taking care of herself, absolutely. There's no question that she should be free. There's no reason why a perfectly capable adult cannot take care of themselves and make their own decisions, whether those are correct decisions or incorrect decisions. I think a lot of people can definitely empathize with that concept, right? That we all should be free to determine our own lives and make our own mistakes if that's what we need to do. Mm-hmm. But the question is whether or not she can be taken advantage of in a very serious way, similar to the ways that she may have been taken advantage of leading up to the conservatorship in the first place. But I think, one of the things that I notice about this decision is anytime that the court makes a decision that isn't automatically freeing Britney Spears yesterday, people get very emotional about it. People get very upset. And I understand. I mean, Britney has been expressing the fact that she's unhappy in this situation. And a lot of people love Britney, understandably so. She's wonderful. But at the same time, this is not one of those things that was going to be, a huge game changer anyway. Having the difference of about a month to flesh out these arguments, make a decision. It does not indicate that the court is going to say, that the court has already decided that she's going to stay in the conservatorship. All it means is that they said, as much as there are potential harms being done to Britney right now, we have to balance those against the rights of the other parties involved here. I mean, that's basically what they had to do was an equitable, weighing of these interests of possible harms to one, possible harms to another. And ultimately they said probably the worst thing that could happen is that we don't prepare for this very important question, this very important issue. And we go into it a little bit too hastily and then we make the wrong decision. Yeah. So
no, you're 100% right. And again, sometimes nuance isn't the popular opinion, but it happens but that's the reason why these people love us. The reason why people love us is because we go into the nuance. It's because we stop and say, no, it's not just obviously, like for instance, our views on the women's soccer thing. They're controversial as much, but the reason why people love those views is because we say, no, hold on, stop. There are facts here that people aren't considering, and here are the facts. So if it's controversial to say we need more facts to come to an informed opinion, then we're two of the most controversial people on YouTube.
I know. Isn't that crazy? Like that, to me, that's just the default. But I guess I've always been a little bit slow to react. I think partly because for me, I'm always a little bit suspicious of hashtag campaigns. It's like when it seems like there's almost like social pressure to agree with something, whether it's political in nature or not. Like I'm always a little bit suspicious of it because I don't know, for whatever reason. I just I don't like being pushed to a certain conclusion unless I've independently gotten there myself.
Yeah. And a lot of people, and this is probably going to be something good for the fans. A lot of the fans out there don't realize the law is derived from politics, right? The law is the baby of politics. It's the political branches that give us the law. So the law inherently has these biases, has these, these motives in it, right? And only thing we do as lawyers is take that baby from the political process and try to merge it to something where it can be equitable for everybody. That's what the courts do. It says, here it is, and we're going to try to make it work for everybody.
Baby. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, well, it's essentially. But the law, people try. There is a divide between the law and the process of making the law. But I think a lot of people don't just have to realize the law is a political animal by nature. It is political. It derives from politics. Without politics, you would not have the laws we have. It is a result of the politics.
Right. So it's you can't really have a discussion purely on law without some consideration of politics too.
Yeah.
So as much as Viva Frei would say politics ruins everything, it kind of is. I mean, it is technically everywhere. So everything is ruined.
That's true. It derives the whole law is ruined because the law is derived from politics. You have another super chat.
Yes, let me get to that. Thank you so much, Eldon Vanling. This looks like 200 rupees. Have some rupees. I had to put on my green hat and break a lot of very expensive pots to get it. It was really hard work. However, Princess Zelda was not amused with all the vandalized property. Well, I appreciate your vandalization of the pottery. I will now be able to buy a new tunic for my Zelda.
Oh, look. Oh, hold on. Chris Colon said the last time they used this procedure was Ted Kennedy. Wow. Yeah, that's suspect. If you look about the procedure from Massachusetts.
Oh, Massachusetts.
Yes, the last time it was used was Ted Kennedy. That's like a lifetime ago. Yeah, that makes it even more suspect.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, I want to try to do a video on this case, but I want to make sure I get all the facts and speak to the family before I do, because I think it's an interesting case, and I think more people should know about it. But I really want to. But you know how I do. Like, remember with our thing, it's just like, you got to get to the weeds. You got to know how to portray it, because that's one of the biggest things about. For those of you who don't know how YouTube works, the hardest thing for, I think, us to do is take these complex legal topics and dumb them down, so just everybody can understand them. Because a lot of times when I read the stuff, I'm like, I don't understand any of this. And I've been trained to read through this stuff, and I got to go do the research and do this, and then try to figure out how to make it easy for you to understand. And that's essentially what we're trying to do.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that is the thing, isn't it? Was it who was it? Sorry, the way I'm talking right now. Was it Einstein, I think, that said that, like, if you can't
explain it to a 12-year-old.
Yeah, like, if you can't explain a complex topic simply, then you simply don't understand the topic, or something like that.
If you can't explain it to a 12-year-old, then you don't really know it yourself.
Right.
So.
Right. I mean, so yeah. So that is the greatest challenge, and it's funny because it's so many of the videos that we end up putting out, I mean, hopefully, ideally, are that simple. So it seems like, oh, like this is easy. Like this is totally simple stuff. But getting there is you're having to connect a lot of dots, cut out a lot of fluff. And especially if you're someone like me that can sort of run a lot of words in between concepts, that can be difficult.
Oh yeah. The hardest thing is, it's funny because the hardest thing in poker to do is fold, and the hardest thing for us is to cut out a part that we've done. So it's tough, but it's we all want to be the best for the audience, and and striving for that perfection is what moves us forward. So it's like that's one thing I do appreciate about Christianity, is that it's not about being perfect, it's about striving for perfection, right? Mm-hmm. And it's about trying to be perfect, that even though it's unobtainable, it's still, you want to be better than you were before. And I think that's a noble idea, and it's something that I think everybody should strive for.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I completely agree. So on that note, you want to talk about the next subject?
Yes. Where are we at now?
So now the next one is, we haven't, or another thing that happened this week was, Joe Biden apparently was talking about the possibility of doing a mask mandate for schools nationwide. He was asked about it by the press, I think maybe on Monday or Tuesday, and he said, I don't know if that would be entirely legal, but we're looking into it. So he wasn't sure if he had the ability to do that, which is interesting because he also said that about the CDC eviction moratorium, and then he went and did it. So who knows? Maybe that's still coming anyway. What are your thoughts on that? Because when we're talking about schools, usually the way to impact nationwide policies is to tie it to funding. We were kind of talking about this offline earlier.
Yeah, there've been a couple of so everybody understands the legal framework of this is that the state governments don't have to enforce federal law. It's the federal government's job to enforce federal law, but states can enforce it if they choose to, but they don't have to. So when you talk about things like mask mandates federally or something like that, the state governments have to have a reason why they're going to do it. So one of the biggest examples is for highway safety and the drinking age. So federally, the drinking age, what is the prohibition of drinking is 21, right? They said federally they want it to be 21, but a state can choose to have people drink at 18 or 17. They don't have to follow. The drinking age does not have to be 21, but it's 21 in every state. It does not have to be. A state can bucket and say, we're going to make it 16 if we want, right? The state has that right. They don't have to follow the federal law. But to make it 21, to make all the states have the drinking age of 21, the federal government passed a law saying, well, we're going to fund highways throughout all the states. But to be eligible for this funding, which is billions of dollars, the one thing we need from you is to make the drinking age in your state 21. right? By law, you pass a law to make it 21. So the state legislatures have the choice. Do we pass this law making it illegal for people to drink at 21? Or do we say we don't want to do that and risk the funding? But guess what? All the states did it so they can get the funding. And that's similar to what I think they're going to be doing here with the school mask program, because again, the federal government mandates, gives all this money to public schools across the country, and things like Common Core, for instance. Remember that when that was mandated, they do that all through triggering funding. If you want this funding for your schools, then we'll expect you to do this, and if not, then you lose that funding. But there are limitations on that, though, and the Supreme Court has made some very interesting limitations where it can't be coercive. So if like, for instance, if I'm giving, like for Medicare, for instance, Justice Roberts just recently did this with the Medicare, an Obamacare case, where they said, we'll strip all your Medicaid funding from you if you don't sign up for Obamacare. And the court said, well, that's too much, because the majority of their budgets dealt with that type of funding. And if you rip it all from them, then, that's not fair. You have to, you can't just, that's coercive. That's not policy driven. So 5% of a budget is about enough, which is the highway funding. And they say about 15%, which was Medicaid and Medicare funding, is coercive. So if that's kind of the trigger you got to look at.
And also in schools too, when we're talking about school curriculum, there also are limitations there based on other constitutional arguments. So First Amendment has been one of the biggest ones. Both the Establishment Clause and the I'm blanking on the term. So that the two religious clauses. There's the Establishment Clause and the
free exercise.
Free exercise. Thank you.
Clause.
Oh my gosh, brain fart. Hello. Good morning. So yes, and the free exercise clause and the Establishment Clause. It's those two have to be in balance when we're talking about the First Amendment, and especially when it comes to the state coming in and regulating how certain things are taught or not taught in schools, if it touches upon religion at all. And so there was, I think, if I remember correctly, it's been a while since I've looked at this, but there are a number of cases where the Supreme Court looked at funding that was tied to like the teaching of certain religious or anti-religious subjects. If I'm not mistaken, I don't know. Do you remember those cases, Nate?
Yeah, there are. Well, the big cases now are with the evolution funding, evolution and anti-evolution funding. So for those of you who don't know, evolution and by Darwinian evolution, that's the cornerstone of biology, is taught in science classes. But there is a religious piece to it where they say that evolution is false, and they want to teach intelligent design instead of evolution. So that's been, but now the courts have rejected allowing intelligent design to be taught in schools because they said it's religious in nature. You can't teach religion, and the only thing that schools, especially public schools, can teach are things that are secular in nature, that don't have any religious dogma. Science, for instance, so it's a promotion of science. So that's generally the battle that you're coming to now.
But I think you can have religious studies in a private school so long as it's like across the board. You include a lot of different religions so that it's not establishing any particular religion.
Well, the cases I actually did a law review article on this, and the cases, the distinction is that in a science class you can only teach science, and in math class you can only teach math, and they look to the scientific community to see what this is, right? What this science is, what this math is, and if it is in line with the scientific consensus of the scientific community, then there's no problem. You can teach it. When it comes to religion can't be taught in you can't teach religion in science classes. But what you can do is you can teach religion in social studies classes. You can teach
philosophy.
Religion in a philosophy class or a comparative religious studies class, to show people the differences of religion.
That makes sense.
But those are different because science are, there's a difference between science and religion. So the religion is not barred from public education, but what it is just barred from being taught as true in public education. So science is taught to be true. Math is taught to be true. Religion is taught to be a cultural concept.
Yeah, because that would violate the Establishment Clause.
Yes.
If public schools were to teach it as this is the truth, this is the one single truth, right?
Exactly.
So
without teaching all the other truths.
Yes. Yes, exactly. It's the idea of the Christmas creche or the nativity scene, on at City Hall.
Yeah.
They're allowed to have it, but they have to allow all of the other, religions, all the other, all the other religions that want to be represented there.
Equally. Yeah.
Exactly.
You
Yes.
can't play
Yeah.
favorites. And it's tough because on one end, if thinking about it if you're a religious person and you think about this, if you believe your religion, let's say if you're a Muslim and you believe your religion is 100%, if you believe your religion is true, unassailable, and factual, then yeah, I would want it to be taught in schools. I would want all these children to be taught. Like if I believed if you didn't learn my religion, you would be going to hell, then guess what? We got a problem. I don't want you to go to hell. I want to save this child's life. So I do understand it from that perception. If religious people believe that they're trying to save souls and lives, then it's a very honorable way to think. But then the law doesn't see it that way because all the other religions are trying to save souls and so forth and so forth.
Right.
And then how do you distinguish which one is actually the one true one and which one is not? So just that type of that understanding that there are these many differences that can't be worked out. Then it's kind of like, okay, well, either you teach them all or you teach none of them. And then right now, most school districts are we're not going to teach any of them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's that's understandable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Biden, though, I do think this is very dangerous precedent that Biden's setting, though, because I hate the fact is I know it's illegal, but I'm still going to do it anyway. I don't believe we have the law. That's starting to become authoritarian, right? I don't believe it's illegal, but I'm still going to do it. I would rather him say, I don't know if this is going to be illegal, but I'm going to take a shot, right?
Yes.
Right? I'm going to write it. That's
right.
And I think a lot of times we get so entrenched in our silos that we cheer, okay, he's doing it, but then I bet if a Republican gets in there and starts doing the same thing, then it's going to be like, oh my God, it's the worst buy ever. So, it's politics, but it's just, it always astonishes me to see that what people will accept when it's their guy. Because again, I hate going back to this. I know my Democratic friends are going to be hating me for this, but I go back to Tara Reid and to Biden and to all that stuff. They were saying, no, they must be purged. We must purge all of them, purge all of the evil, the people who have even been accused. They must be purged from the party. Now the leader of the party is someone who's been accused multiple times. Mm-hmm. It's sad.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and in any case, and including in Joe Biden's case, I mean, I would caution that we would need to, before jumping to expelling anyone from anything or canceling anyone from anything, is you've got to take a look at the actual facts and really examine them ruthlessly and make that determination before you jump on it. I think we as a society are a little bit hasty, generally speaking, regardless of which political side we're talking about.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I have as much crap to say about Republicans as I do with Democrats, but I just,
no, I know you do.
Right? But the one thing I will always say, it's like yesterday we were arguing about mask mandates, and it was one of the most interesting pieces of it is that they were like, oh, I have a constitutional right not to wear a mask. Well, I was like, well, hold on. Here's all these cases where we have all these cases. Have you ever heard of the stripper cases for the Constitution for the Supreme Court?
Stripper cases? No.
Yeah, they have the stripper cases for the Supreme Court. All right, so
I know the Rupping cases. Everyone knows those.
Okay,
at least from when Al-Khan law. Which for anyone that has not been through law school, Rupping is that refers to a very dark period of the history of the Supreme Court when they were looking at cases. They were First Amendment cases, free speech cases, brought on with the subject matter was certain, let's say, I'll call them illicit dramas.
Yeah.
And so the Supreme Court is not supposed to be a fact-finding body. So they're not supposed to be like a trial court, right? Where you look at these are the facts, and we're going to analyze these facts and come to a conclusion. They're supposed to look strictly at the legal standard. And so what happened was when these kind of cases started to come up, one of the, I can't remember which justice said it, but he basically said, I know when something is illicit or not. And I can't say the exact standard, but I know it when I see it.
Yeah, that was the standard. The standard was, I know it when I see it.
Yes. So basically that meant all of these cases, you know, we're examining, you know, these human beings in certain acts, and the Supreme Court justices had to sit in a dark room and watch these videos and determine whether or not they had any artistic merit, to determine whether they had any First Amendment rights of existence. I remember my con law professor in my 1L year, he said, I think he had been a clerk for a Supreme Court justice. I can't remember which one, but he had heard from another former clerk that was that was working for one of the justices at that time. And like these guys were so old, you know, like the justice that this other guy was working for was practically blind. So he had to basically describe what had happened or what was going on. And I just, oh my God, can you imagine being that person? Like describing with detail, well, Your Honor, this is what's going on. And now this is what's happening. And now this is happening. And then you have to go home and probably knock back 5 drinks just to get all of that out of your brain.
Oh my God.
Anyway, so that's red rupping for anyone that doesn't know. Back to the stripper cases.
The stripper cases happened in the 80s, and there was an issue where you had some municipalities wanted to outlaw strip clubs. So they did. They said, well, you can't have any more strip clubs. So it became a First Amendment issue, whether these women who were number one, were they performers, and were they trying to convey a message? So the court said, yes, they are performers, and their message happens to be erotic in nature. So now, can you convey that erotic? Now, then it became, well, how can you convey that erotic message? Lap dances and things of that nature seem to be okay. But now, if you're conveying, but do you need to be fully clothed to convey that message? So then the Supreme Court said, yeah, well, you don't have to be fully clothed, because obviously it's part of performance. So we came to the G-string cases where it was like, well, now can you be totally without clothes and perform? And is that protected speech? Because they said, well, you do have this type of I forgot the particular term, but it wasn't speech. It was I forgot the name of it. It wasn't just regular speech. They have a different name for it. But anyway, well, whether their speech or this message they were trying to portray would be hindered by regulating what they can wear. Mm-hmm. And then you had the pasties and the G-string rule, where they can, where the court said, well, if you forced women in that environment to wear pasties and the G-string, then they could convey whatever erotic message they want fully without having the limitation of being nude. And then the second, the way municipalities started getting around it was saying, well, then to enforce this, we would, any establishment that had women who didn't wear clothes couldn't have alcohol. And most states, I don't know if most states have that rule where if you have an establishment with this, you can't serve alcohol. But if they do wear clothes, you can serve alcohol. So that went up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, well, that's legal because, the state can choose what establishments can serve alcohol. Right. Mm-hmm. And if it, no matter how it affects their First Amendment rights, right, they get to choose, so it doesn't stop them from conveying their message. It just stops them from selling alcohol. So that's mm-hmm. the G-string cases with which in the mass context, the Supreme Court said, even with masks, with even clothing wearing outside, the Supreme Court said, yeah, the state can mandate you to do these things. It's still okay. Right. It doesn't remove the freedom to say you have to wear a shirt outside, you have to wear clothes, right? We all understand that, but it comes down to the reasoning. And and generally, the reasoning for forcing you to wear clothes outside is a lot lower than the reason they're forcing you to wear masks, because mask mandates are for essentially public health, where wearing clothes is for obscenity. So obscenity is really down here, where public health is up here. So It's easier for them to force you to wear anything versus wearing a mask. So that's why we're coming to the conclusion that mask mandates are pretty much legal, if under the prior precedent, even though, I know a lot of people aren't happy with that, but it's just, it happens to be the case.
Yeah, because I think an argument can be made. So even if, if we're talking about a free speech case that is a free speech case where we're under strict scrutiny, right? Because there's varying levels of scrutiny. Strict scrutiny is the hardest for the government to meet. I mean, they have to have a strong nexus to a compelling government interest, and public safety during a pandemic. The argument for that to be a compelling government interest, probably fairly strong, to be honest. So
and the Supreme Court has already found COVID-19 to be a compelling government interest to restrict speech. So it's not even like it's even a question. So it's I understand that people don't like it, but it's just unfortunately it's just the way it works.
Yeah. And especially if it's being tied to government funding, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
So funding or licensing, like in the stripper cases, liquor licensing. So, but I guess with schools, it would most likely be tied to funding.
Yeah. I think it'll just be tied to funding. If you want to do this, it'll be tied to funding. Someone says in the chat, the Ohio Supreme Court. Now, this is interesting because in Ohio court, generally, there are state courts and there are federal courts. So federal courts are one thing. State courts, if the state court finds it to be unconstitutional based on state law, which is possible, then the mandate could be gone. So I'm not sure if this ruling was on state law or based on federal law. But based on federal law, that's what we're talking about. Based on state law, I don't know, because the states are allowed to be more restrictive than the federal law.
Yes. Yeah. So that could still be the case. So, well, anyway, we're about an hour in. Anything else you want to add?
Well, no, I just think it was great having me on, and thanks again for having me. And
of course.
And hopefully we'll see everybody accept. And great questions in the chat too. Thanks again, guys. And thanks for all the congratulations for the 100,000. I appreciate it.
Yeah, guys. And thanks for all the super chats. That's awesome. Love it. Really appreciate it. Very, very kind of you guys to be supporting the channel like that. And yeah, those are some really good questions that were asked here that really helped the discussion. So anyway, otherwise be sure to like the video so that more people can see this, and subscribe to the channels if you haven't already. And I see it. There's a question on the small kitty. She is doing fine. If you follow me on Twitter, you can see a very adorable photo of the two cats cuddling together. They are getting along just fine. Astra, the kitten, she still does not like Indy, our dog, but I think eventually they'll kind of warm up. But the two cats are doing great. They pretty much love each other, so that's good. All's well on that front. So anyway, but yeah, like the video, share the video, and yeah, it was a great discussion. I'll see you guys next week. See ya.